To today's CPC meeting. And the Seattle Community Police Commission acknowledges that we are on the traditional land of the Coast Salish people, including the Muckleshoot, Suquamish, and Duwamish people, past and present. And with humility, we recognize how much we benefit from living on their land and water. The Seattle Community Police Commission honors and lifts these tribes, and we hope that this acknowledgement will encourage authentic relationships with urban Native people and all Coast Salish tribes. And now I'll move into taking our attendance. Prachi Dave?
I'm here.
Thank you. Morning. Austin Fields?
I'm here.
Good morning. And I am here, Reverend Patricia Hunter. Reverend Harriet Walden?
Yeah.
Good morning. Douglas Wagner? Joseph Saya? Elena Santian?
Present.
Good morning. Erica Newman? Tasha Johnson?
Good morning, I'm here.
Good morning. Lejeah Washington? Suzette Dickerson?
Present.
Good morning. Officer Mark Mullins? Joel Merkel?
I'm present.
Good morning. And Jeremy Wood?
Present. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Well, let's move into the approving the agenda. So you all received it in your packet of information. Is there a motion to receive the agenda?
I'll move to receive the agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we receive the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any,
Aye.
any opposed? Say nay. And abstentions. Thank you. So the agenda is approved. And now we will go into approving the minutes that were distributed. Is there a motion to receive the minutes?
Yeah, I'll move to receive the minutes.
Thank you, Austin. It's been moved. Is there a second?
This is Alina. I'll second.
Thank you, Alina.
Recording in progress.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the minutes of our last meeting, August 17th. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Well, the motion to receive the minutes as distributed has been approved. Thank you. And at this time, I will turn the meeting over to our Executive Director, Grant, so she can introduce our guest.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the meeting today. I want to introduce the Office of Independent Investigations. We appreciate them being in attendance, giving them the director an opportunity to introduce folks and give us an overview of the office. We want to welcome you here today. Thank you.
Well, first of all, it's so good to see you again, and had a chance to meet Reverend Walden during a Zoom meeting. Y'all are both so kind to let us explain a little bit about what we're going to do, and really excited about the opportunity to present that to the full commission today. My name is Roger Rogoff. I am the newly appointed director of the Office of Independent Investigations. I guess I can still call me newly appointed. I've been on the job for about 3 months now. Since that time, we've hired a number of folks in our some of our leadership positions, and wanted to have them here also so that you could meet them and have them introduce themselves. So I'm going to go around. It's going to take a little bit of time. I think it's worth it just to hear a little bit about the breadth of experience that we are going to have for this this team. And I would also like to start by saying that one of the folks that was on the call last week is not here today. She's not feeling well. That's Dana Bowles, who was a public defender back in the day, and then went on to do a lot of work with underserved communities throughout Pierce, King, and Thurston counties. Her last job was with the Office of Civil Legal Aid with the state. So she has incredible experience providing services directly to communities, as well as, oh, Dana, you're here.
I am here, but you're doing such a good job, and I'm so sick. So please go on. You do a much better job of introducing me than I do myself. So I'm glad to be here. When I'm sick, my voice is not great. So I'm just happy to be here with you guys today, and I'll let Roger go on.
And on and on and on. And so she was responsible for making sure money got to the right places for underserved communities, and that those services were provided. And now she's with us, and we're really excited to have her. She's mostly involved with business development and DEI work, and she's been just a terrific addition. So I'll go around this way, starting with Hector, and let everyone introduce themselves.
Thanks, Roger. My name is Hector Castro. I joined the Office of Independent Investigations in May, not long before Roger joined the agency. And I am Assistant Director for Communications and Community Relations.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing us to be here. My name is Annette Taylor. I joined the Office of Independent Investigations Officer. So, and I am the investigative infrastructure manager, set up investigative officers across the state and higher the state.
My name is Tracy Lapps, and I am on, I believe, day 4 of the Office of Independent Investigations. I was most recently with the King County Department of Public Defense. I was an attorney in the felony division for the majority of the time that I was there. Also defended juveniles accused of crimes. About 3 years at the very beginning of my time there was representing parents and adolescents in the child welfare system and the dependency system. So overall, 24 years, and I am very excited to come here and continue. I will miss some of the direct client contact, but I'm excited about the new mission and the new office. Looking forward to working.
And Tracy's our Assistant Director of Investigations, so she'll be very involved in the direct investigative work on the ground, along with Jessica.
County Prosecutor's Office for 23 years, the last 12 of which I spent in the homicide unit doing on-call response to homicide scenes or suspicious deaths, and being part of the investigation and following all the way through. So I'm hoping that's kind of the expertise that I will bring to the table. And I've been here for a little less than 2 weeks, and I think my official title is Legal and Policy Advisor.
It's good that you've learned that.
It seems to change every once in a while. I haven't got a card yet, but soon I will.
Hi there. My name is Jane Nesbitt. I'm chief of staff. I'm very honored and privileged to be here.
Yeah, so Jane always does just such a terrible job of introducing herself. She's been involved in the organization since its inception. We'll talk a little bit about the task force, the state task force that led to the creation of this office. And Jane was there when that was going on, was part of the transition team that raised the office from the statute to an actual place, and have been very involved in community outreach and making sure that we're staying true to the intent of the statute as we move forward and create this office. She's also involved in hiring me. So good question of judgment a little bit. So Ms. Grant, I don't know how you want me to just launch in, or is there something that are there other things on the agenda that you wanted to do first?
Oh, no. I would love for you, Roger, to go ahead and jump in.
Okay, all right, I'll do that. So I want us to give you a little bit of an idea of what this office is, because it is consistent and parallel to some of the work that the CPC does in looking at police investigations of use of deadly force. And our job is going to be to take over the investigations of these cases from the ground up. So when we become operational, and we'll talk a little bit about when that will happen, you will hear about us being at the scenes of these events when they occur, conducting the criminal part of those investigations, making determinations about what happened and what the facts are, and hopefully being communicative and eventually providing a report that describes in great detail what the facts of each of these cases are, what some of the legal analysis is that would go into making a decision on charging, and then making a referral to a prosecuting agency regarding the decision-making on the case. So we are at our core, we are an investigative agency and not a prosecutor agency. So our job ends at the decision-making process for whether to charge somebody. Want to talk a little bit about the overview of the office, current status of the office, because there's been some media attention about us not being quite ready to start, and I can explain a little bit about why that is, and then our priorities going forward. So to just set the stage, in 2020, the governor convened a task force in the wake of all of the nationally known cases that were coming forward and people were hearing about, where the investigations into police use of deadly force were not done well, were not clear to communities, didn't provide the type of information that communities were looking for in the wake of these incidents. And then there were a number of cases, of course, locally as well, including Mandy Ellis and Jeff Nelson, in cases around the state, where folks were not getting the information that they deserved about what had happened, and then what was happening with the investigation. And so the governor convened a task force to create a better way forward in investigating these cases. That task force included a wide, diverse group of people from across the state, including families who've been impacted by these cases, including advocacy groups related to civil rights, related to immigration, related to Hispanic communities, Black communities, Asian communities, and there was a real push to create something new. And what was created and what that task force really wanted to see was an independent agency, an agency that was not beholden to a police group, a police agency, an office that was not beholden to a prosecutor's office, an office that was as independent as it could be. So a statute was written that created our office called the Office of Independent Investigations, and we sit underneath the governor. We are not part of the Attorney General's office. We're not part of any prosecutor's office. We're not part of any police agency. And the statute is very clear, and its intent, the intent portion of that statute, which I commend everyone to read, because it very clearly sets out what our mission is, which is to do competent, thorough, and I would add compassionate investigations done with an anti-racist lens and done with as little bias as possible. And those are sort of the tenets that we have created this office on and that we intend to move forward with. The statute was passed in 2021 in that legislative session, and there were some dates that were attached to that statute. And one of the dates was that as of July 1st, 2022, we would start investigating cases of police use of deadly force across the state. Unfortunately, the director wasn't hired until June 16th of 2022, about 14 days before that date. And so one of the first messages we sent out with me as the first actual employee of the office was that we're not quite ready to do that, that it's incredibly important that when we do start going to these scenes, that the work is done well, because if the work is not done well, then whatever words are part of the statute really don't matter, because we will lose credibility. And unless we're doing these cases credibly, all of the hope and the wisdom of this statute kind of goes by the wayside. So my hope, my wish is that we prepare ourselves to investigate these cases by basically 4 things: hiring the right people to do these cases, by training them consistently with the wishes of the statute, by creating protocols and policies that are consistent with the statute, and those policies will be public and transparent, so that if folks want to know how we're doing our work and what we're sort of adherent to, they can see it in written form. And then outreach, which from my perspective is just as important as all the other 4 things, in that we need to let the communities that will be impacted by these cases know what we intend to do, how we intend to do it, and when we intend to start doing it. So that's one of the reasons that we're here today talking to you all. So the statute has basically 2 components or 2 parts to our work. One is to investigate new cases of use of force, use of deadly force, and those would be criminal investigations only. So I know y'all are very aware of how, for instance, the Seattle Police Department does its work. And in those cases, there are typically a couple different parts to the investigation. One is the administrative investigation, the investigation that determines whether or not the officers have violated internal policies and whether there should be some sort of employer action because of misconduct in that way. Those are not the investigations we're doing. Our investigations are purely the criminal part of the investigations. Did the officer or officers commit a crime in the way that they interacted with the person who was impacted? And so it's a very narrow investigation, but one that will definitely sort of intersect with those administrative investigations as well. And it also doesn't mean that we're not interested in whether officers violated policy, because that's evidence of whether or not a crime was committed. It may not be the all and end all of the evidence, but it is certainly evidence that's important. And it doesn't mean that we're not interested in officers' history with the department, officers' history in the community, and so forth, because all of that, from our perspective, is evidence of whether a crime was committed. But our eventual job is to conduct a criminal investigation. The 4 priorities I talked about start with hiring. And when I talk about hiring the right people, you can imagine that that is a really difficult task. First of all, we have a number of people to hire. We are going to conduct these investigations statewide. So we have to have investigators in far east of Spokane, of course, as far north and south as Bellingham and Clark County. And so we intend to have 6 basic locations throughout the state, 4 on the west side up and down the corridor, and then 1 in the middle of the state and 1 on the east side of the Spokane area. Those locations are based on a review of where these cases have come from over the past 5 or so years. It just to give you a little bit of a sense of numbers. Over the last 5 years, we've averaged about 25 to 40 police uses of deadly force that resulted in death per year. And then we've averaged about 225 cases per year of uses of deadly force, period, whether they resulted in death or not. So our mission is to conduct investigations of a large number of cases. And as we ramp up here, and we've gone from 1 employee in June to 13 employees in September, our resources are going to probably limit us somewhat in the numbers of cases we take. I don't think we're going to be able to start out our very first operational day ready to handle 225 cases a year. So we are in the midst of writing policies and protocols, which create priorities on which of those cases we will take first. And we will likely focus on those that result in death first, and then grow from there. We continue to hire investigators. Hiring investigators is going to be incredibly difficult. We've got a tension there in that we would like our culture of our office to reflect something different than the culture of the agencies that have historically investigated these cases. The problem we have is that those who are currently trained and experienced in how to conduct complex homicide investigations are almost exclusively former police officers. And so we will be hiring former law enforcement. Fortunately, our statute provides some guardrails there, including the fact that our any hire we do of somebody who's been a law enforcement agent in the past 2 years has to be approved by our advisory board. And I should go back and tell you that our advisory board was chosen by the governor ahead of my hiring and were instrumental in hiring me. And that group of 11 people is a diverse cross-section of our state, including geographically, folks from Spokane, middle of the state, and on the west side, as well as diverse backgrounds in terms of personal background as well as professional background. We have folks who are impacted families, people who had their children killed by police, in cases that have gone on to result in multi-million-dollar successful lawsuits against police agencies. We have folks who are interested in immigration issues, folks who are civil rights attorneys, folks who are law enforcement, maybe have a prosecutor on that group. It's just really a wonderful group of people who have worked really hard to find common ground in agency forward. And so if we do hire folks who have been law enforcement agents within the last 2 years, they have to be approved by a majority of our board. Our hope is to, in addition to hiring those more experienced investigators, is to also hire a number of entry-level investigators who will likely not have law enforcement experience, or there'll be less folks in that group who have law enforcement experience. And those people can be pulled from any number of places, like criminal justice program graduates at community colleges or four-year colleges, law students who don't want to be lawyers, but would otherwise maybe go become FBI agents, but have a passion for this kind of work instead and want to become investigators. We're going to do some outreach to HBCUs and historically Hispanic colleges. We're going to be doing outreach nationally to organizations that will likely produce folks who do this work. And our hope is to have a group of folks who don't have that law enforcement background, who can be trained by the senior investigators, be in ethical relationship with those investigators, learn how to do the work, and eventually they would become senior investigators and sort of take over the teaching portion of what we do. Our statute requires us to have a plan to make our organization less reliant on law enforcement, and we're required to have that plan in place by so that is one of the things that we want to make sure that we do. So you can hire the greatest people in the world, but if you don't train them right, then it really doesn't matter. And that training first of all, I'm incredibly excited about the training program that we're creating. We hired a training coordinator who has some experience with the Washington State Patrol, but also in other government agencies in the state. And she has really, it's actually pretty amazing that within the month that she's been with us, she has taken that work and really created a program that all of our folks will go through that will include how to do a homicide investigation, how to do it right, even for those folks who have done them in the past. And then also adding in the anti-racist training, anti-bias training that is necessary and required by our statute, but also just needs to happen in order to do this differently. So I'm really excited about that program. It is just about ready for prime time, and really we just need some investigators to give it to at this point. So that part is moving forward. And then the policies and protocols, and Jessica and Tracy are here now, and so I can tell you that they are going to be doing a lot of work on those issues. And the idea with those is that there are three kind of protocols that we want to put in place. One is our internal manual that says, hey, here's how we do our work. This is what we intend to do aside from what everyone else is doing. Here's what our investigations will look like. Here's what our people will be doing. Here's what our work product will be at the end of it. Those will be, even though they're internal, there's going to be public so people can see them. And then we have two other protocols which are really important. One relates to how we interact with independent investigative teams that currently exist as a result of I-940, which I know all of you are aware of. And those independent investigative teams continue to exist, will continue to do important work, but there is going to be a handoff in the cases that we take over, because we will be taking those cases over from independent investigative teams. So we're writing protocols on how that handoff should look, what the work that each of those two entities, OII and IIT, are going to do to make sure that those scenes are handled reasonably, that we don't have 2 a.m. arguments with IITs, that everyone understands what they're supposed to do. And so those protocols are also being written. And then finally, we're going to have protocols related to how we interact with involved agencies. So those agencies who one of the members of that agency committed the act that led to the investigation that we did. And those agencies we are not permitted to share information with during our investigation, except for some limited information in terms of briefings with chiefs and sheriffs. But there's going to be interaction at the scene because obviously those folks will be there. And so there need to be some protocols on how we deal with them, how they deal with us, and what the rules are with regard to how we deal with them. Those are the three basic protocols that we're writing. Those have been written, but they're sort of in the approval process. And we continue to add to them and take away from them to make sure that they make sense, particularly as we meet with groups like yours, where we always get ideas and thoughts and concerns. We make changes based on communication we've had with the Washington Coalition for Police Accountability. We've made changes based on meetings that we've had with law enforcement. So they're always subject to change before they're finally approved. And then finally, the outreach priority. And one of the things that I would love to take away from this meeting, in addition to answering whatever questions y'all have, is if there are other groups, I know each of you who are commissioners have your own communities, your own networks that you work with and that you are part of. And if there are networks or groups that we should be talking to, we want to do that. Even, I would say most importantly, groups that are skeptical. We want to get in front of as many people as possible to explain what we're doing and answer those hard questions, which for many communities who have had lots of government agencies tell them that they're going to fix everything and then nothing changes, is totally legitimate. And I have been asked a lot of really hard questions, some of which I can answer and some of which I can't. And we absolutely invite those hard questions because we want that to sort of sharpen our work and make sure that we're doing it right and doing it the right way. I think I'll shut up now for a little bit because I feel like I've talked a lot. But I absolutely invite any questions that we have. And I also would just open it up to my group as well. If there's anything I've forgotten, as I start talking, I forget some things. If there's anything important that I've forgotten that needs to be added from my team, absolutely.
Just a family liaison.
Yeah. Go ahead, you do it.
So one of the other sort of key positions that our agency will have are family liaisons. These will be people who connect with the affected families and just ensure that they have communication with our agency, are kept apprised of the ongoing investigation, that they're not surprised by any sort of public statements that we make. Essentially just to provide some level of support for people going through those circumstances. And then in addition, we will also have key positions that will be community relations positions. So their role will be to stay connected with all of the public organizations, community groups that are aware of our activities, are interested in our activities, and just want to stay informed. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. I realized I don't know when your office makes a criminal referral, does that go to the county prosecutor or to the state? You're gonna jump right into my nightmare, are you? Yeah, I'm not sure yet. We're working on that question. And some of that is going to be in consultation with the governor and with the attorney general. Some of it's going to be based on resources, and I don't have a clear answer yet. I will tell you that I understand some of the concern about referring to a local prosecutor, in that there are incredible pressures and conflicts that exist. And I think, Jessica can probably talk about that directly in some ways, in that the King County prosecutor has charged Jeffrey Nelson with a crime, and that case is moving forward, and it hasn't been easy with the Auburn Police Department. And so I think they're getting the sort of the consequences of what can happen to some extent. I don't know if you wanted to add to that at all.
I imagine it's going to depend on the agency. King County has enough resources to have a siloed unit called the Public Integrity Unit that is going to handle all officer-involved use of force criminal charges, which I think in a county that size, it makes it a little easier for them to do that. But I can't imagine a small county, and I'm not sure that that will suffice to appease the public in terms of independence. But that's where I think they're at right now.
And then, of course, the AG has actually expressed similar concerns about their ability to deal with these agencies all the time as well. There is a bill that was presented at the same time as ours for an Office of Independent Prosecution, which did not pass the legislature, which the Washington Coalition for Police Accountability is bringing back to the legislature. So if folks on this commission are interested in seeing that happen, which I think would be a very good idea to see that in some way. I would just encourage you to reach out to WCPA to see how,
Like as it states in the bill, and statute currently, it's referring to the prosecuting entity.
Yeah.
As it is now.
And then I have one other question. Obviously, police officers have a lot of protections that the average defendant does not have. And I'm curious how it is from interviewing, especially as well. Sure. Well, I mean, I guess I would say that in the administrative realm, they have a lot more protections. In a purely criminal investigation where I don't work for a law enforcement agency and I'm not subject to a collective bargaining agreement, I think those protections are fewer. And I think one of the things that this agency is keenly aware of is that we don't want to be subject to traditions and things that have sort of traditionally occurred in these investigations. Our job is to do the best criminal investigation we can. So things like, of course, every officer has the right to assert their Fifth Amendment rights and not talk if they have Fifth Amendment rights with regard to a particular investigation. But beyond that, I mean, we're going to do our investigation. We are going to get the records for any officers who are involved that we need in order to understand who they are and what they've done in the past. We're going to use the power of search warrants and the power of subpoenas and all of those investigative tools to get what we want. So whereas with administrative investigations where agencies are hamstrung a little bit because of their CPAs, we're not. We're independent and we can do our criminal investigation in the best way possible. I mean, there's some natural protections for police officers in terms of how people think about it and how the public thinks about it, how their agencies might protect them. But in terms of legally, our job is to do the best criminal investigation possible. We've got specific questions about protections of happiness.
We have Commissioner Santillan, they have a question as well too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, thank you for being here and for providing that information. That was really helpful. It was quiet. Austin's question was kind of quiet. It's the challenge of doing a hybrid meeting, but I think him and I are maybe on the same page in what we're thinking, or maybe it's a follow-up to his. I've been on the commission for a couple of years now, and I think one of my frustrations is things around collective bargaining. Proud union supporter, first of all, support working class folks. I want people to be unionized, all of those things. And also at the same time, I think unions do a really good job of protecting people that should be held accountable for their actions that are harmful and deadly. If I was a police officer, I would want the same. I would want to be held accountable. And I think we've gotten to this frame of accountability, meaning punishment, because that's the culture that we exist in, is one of punishment. In any job I have, I would expect the people around me to be like, hey, I would expect to be held accountable to my actions. So one of my frustrations is that, the CPC has made recommendations, the OIG does, the OPA does, and then things don't change. Problematic officers stay, they stay. Correct me if I'm incorrect in, I think what you were sharing was that you don't necessarily have the power to decide whether or not someone would be prosecuted or whether they'll be charged. But I'm curious around what actual power this body will have in making sure that in your investigation, if you're finding something that is highly problematic, that people will be held accountable for those actions. Because I think that, I would put myself in one of those communities that I am in relationship with that is skeptical, and I'm a commissioner, and I've had a seat at this table for a really long time. I don't want to be skeptical. I want to believe that we're actually able to create change, but I am, and I think that there will be a lot of community groups that will want to believe in the things that you're sharing, and then also want to know how this is going to be different. That's my first question. So just kind of curious what the collective bargaining has been a big barrier, I think, for those. So sorry if you answered that already, but just wanted some expand on that.
I was just gonna say you're starting with a really easy question, which is like, what are you all gonna do that's gonna make a difference, right? I know I appreciate it, and I guess I didn't really give you my background at the beginning of this, but I have been in the criminal justice system for about 30 years now, and I've played every role in that system as a prosecutor, defense attorney, and as a judge. And I am skeptical as well, and I think skepticism is good. I also, despite all of that time in that system and being at crime scenes and seeing results that are terrible and seeing results that are good, also have a lot of optimism about the ability of to make change, force change on systems. And I have seen it happen when I worked at juvenile court, seeing systems change straightforward part of the system, which doesn't mean it's easy, it just means it's a discrete problem. That if we pull together and use the resources that the communities provide, and that we think about these problems in a reasonable way, that we can make a difference in this discrete area of the system. And if you do that, and you make that change visible, public, people see it, and people can trust it, then you can move forward to the next part of the system and make the change that you want to see. And so I just am incredibly optimistic while understanding the skepticism that exists. And so,
I wanted to thank you all for coming. I think it's a great presentation for us for the whole commission. And also, I just wanted to ask you if you could point out that Seattle, that the ordinance does not include STD in that in the ordinance. And also, one of my burning questions, I asked this before, but in my mind, I'm still trying to see how would you preserve the crime scene or the investigated, the area that's being investigated in a place like up north of Spokane, up to the Okanogans or Ponderay and all that. I know those places. I mean, I've been up there, and I know it's far away. I mean, headed toward Canada, it's far away, So that's the burning question in my mind. But as a citizen and a person who's been working on police accountability for the last generation, 30 years, long time, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for the state of Washington. I'm hopeful for the cases going forward. And I understand it's not going to be any cases. All these going to be new cases. They're not going to be any old cases that have already happened. But I'm hopeful for the citizens of the state of Washington, for all the people who are suffering and they still have the sadness, because we know that's always going to be there. So for me, I'm hopeful that that this will speak volumes for the people and begin to bring police accountability in a different way, that people will learn to de-escalate when they can, and this kind of thing. So for me, I sit around the table with lots of hope.
thank you, Reverend. I appreciate that. Let me correct one thing, and that is old cases, we will have an opportunity to take those cases.
How far back though?
There's no limitation on how far back. There is a limitation on there has to be new evidence presented. So if the folks who support the impacted families in those cases present new evidence, then we have the discretion to take those cases. We are in the process of writing policy and protocols on which of those cases we will take and what the term new evidence means. So we are working on that, but we will be able to take old cases. So if there are cases that folks feel were ineffectively investigated and there's new evidence to suggest that a different result should have been taken, those cases can be presented to us.
For that, telling allows comes to my mind, but anyway, that's when it's on my heart. That doesn't mean it's going to have new evidence. It's when it's on my heart.
Yep. So there's a way. I do want to address the Seattle Police Department issue, and it's a significant one for us, and I should have said this at the very beginning. So the Seattle Police Department is a unique issue for us because it is covered right now by consent decree, which you all are more aware of than I am. Unfortunately, our statute and the way the legislature wrote the statute specifically excludes any police department currently covered by a federal consent decree from investigation by OII. So as it stands right now, the statute very clearly says OII is prohibited from investigating cases where there's a consent decree, which means Seattle. Seattle's the only agency in the state that is subject to consent decree. So we started looking at that question because it's obviously concerning. And I think that most likely the purpose of writing in that exclusion to the statute was that legislators figured any agency covered by a consent decree is probably going to be covered by an even better or more independent way of investigating cases than what the OII would do. And I don't think that that is accurate as it currently stands, and that my understanding of the way SPD is doing this work now is that they start with an administrative investigation done by their FIT team. If the FIT team determines that there is the possibility of criminal behavior, they refer it to their homicide unit, their own homicide unit, and or a neighboring police agency to do the investigation. So it is on its face less independent than what OII is proposing to do. And from my perspective, it puts the Seattle Police Department in a tough position to explain why their agency's investigations look so different than everyone else's once you start doing our work. On the other hand, you all are much more in the know than I am about this, so we're actually looking for information from you as well. But there is some hope that, or I don't know if you call it hope, but there's some thought that the consent decree goes away. I'll use that term colloquially, sometime next year. If that happens, and I don't know if it will or not, again, you all know better than I will, then the problem goes away. They're no longer under consent decree. We're in a position to start doing our investigation, and we will start to do our investigation. If it's not, it doesn't go away in the next year, then I think, well, then I know that my team will be moving forward with negotiations with the Seattle Police Department and the other involved parts of the consent decree, like the monitor and DOJ and other agencies, to see if we can come to an agreement with SPD that changes the consent decree to allow us to do our work, so that SPD can look like every other agency in the state. And that will be a difficult lift, and it will take time, and it will be done carefully. But if the consent decree is not going to go away in April, June of next year, then that will be the path we will start moving on in an effort to allow us to do the work. Well, are there any questions about that? Because that's a little bit complicated, a little bit in the weeds.
Just a bit of a statement,
Yeah.
Roger. It just seems, I'm very disappointed. I have to be really honest with you. And it feels very much like an exception that creates a loophole for them not to be investigated in the same manner as other agencies within the state would be. And that feels very problematic, not just as EV, but as a community member as well. I just listened to Reverend Walden, who I have the utmost respect for, talk about feeling hopeful. That makes me feel like we took several steps back during that meeting.
Understood. And I would expect to feel no other way. And what we're trying to do is we want to work with them to make the change so that we start doing those cases. And the only thing that I'm hesitant about is I don't want to do that if it's not going to mean any different, right? If the consent decree is gone and we're doing the cases, when we start becoming operational, then it doesn't really have an impact. If it begins to look like that's not going to happen, then we will start digging in and looking for changes to that agreement, changes to the consent decree, either by agreement or by getting ourselves in front of Judge Robart.
Yeah, it feels like a way to force us from being off from up under the consent decree. To be perfectly honest with you, it feels very strategic.
I have a question on that too. I also see Reverend Hunter has her hand up. I have a couple other questions, but on the consent decree specifically, it's more of a political question. So I'm not sure if you're in a position to answer, but I'm struggling to understand how the legislature did this and where the political will is to keep it. Because you talk about there's potential legislation for an office of independent prosecutor. Where is the Seattle police lobby in the legislature that is protecting this provision? And why can't a bill be proposed to remove this from the statute? Who in the legislature is gonna object to that? And there's a lot of legislators not from Seattle. So I'm just struggling to understand the politics of how that got in there and why it's difficult to get out.
You know a lot more about politics than I do. And I was not around when the legislation was passed. So I don't know all of the answers to those questions, those very good questions. And I agree with you that there probably is a way to do that. And that who, in addition to working on infrastructure for us, is going to be moving to our legislative policy work, is writing that down. And we will get to work on which one. I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense.
If we can partner with you as a commission in that effort, we would love to.
We will definitely get on that.
I have other questions, but Reverend Hunter's had her hand up before me, so I'll let her go before I ask another question.
Well, I want to thank you for coming, and what a very important organization that you have, the Office of Independent Investigations. And I'm also very happy to hear about the family support piece that you will be offering. That seems to be something that's been missing from other investigations that have gone on. So I was really glad to hear about that. You also mentioned that there are, Roger, you mentioned that there are probably somewhere between 25 to 40 deaths per year, and then 225 use of force cases. And I was wondering, does that include Seattle, or is Seattle carved out of that? Is that statewide?
Statewide, that includes Seattle.
All right. Any more that you can say about the family support piece?
It's called a family liaison, and their job will be to support the family that's impacted from the moment that we accept the case until as long as that family wants the support of that liaison. So if there's a court hearing, or if there are court hearings, then they will support them through that. If the court hearings end and it's done, if the family still wants consistent time with somebody who knows what happened to their family member, who is aware of the incidents as they continue to grieve and continue to deal with that loss, that family support person, that family liaison will be with them. So it is a permanent connection to that family that we hope. We have not posted for that position yet. Am I right about that? That's correct. We're in the process of writing that position description. One of the issues with hiring is we've got to make some decisions about what happens first. I think one of the things I thought when I walked into this office and we were going to start this up is, okay, well, let's just start hiring people and we'll get all these people on board and we'll be up and running in no time. And what I realized is that when you only have 7 people to start with, it's hard to start hiring people, right? You only have so much bandwidth. And so we really wanted to get the investigator hiring going, because that's so critical to the investigative work. But the family liaison positions are now being written up and will be posted relatively soon. And I guess I would just say that with the connection you have to the faith community, if there are ways that we can use your and Reverend Walden's connections to those communities to recruit, that we would love that partnership in doing that.
Would love to have a conversation about that.
I would also say, Reverend, that when we were first going to meet with you, and I was doing a little research or stalking about the folks on the commission, I happened to see some of your YouTube sermons, and I just wanted to tell you that much better than the sermons that my rabbis gave to me when I was a kid. I would have been much happier there than where I ended up.
Bless you.
I have a couple other questions. First, I apologize for not thanking everyone from coming earlier.
Yeah, we have Joseph
Oh,
and
Joseph.
Eileen as well too.
Okay, I'll go ahead and let them go first. Sorry.
Joseph?
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. I'm on the road, so I'm calling in from my car. But thanks to the Office of Independent Investigation. This is beautiful work that is that I've dreamed of for a while to really give some ounce of potential justice back to the families. I come from the Pacific Islander community, and our families many have fallen to police killing in the last 5 years. And one of the issues that come up for us is it's not just a police issue, it's a lack of accountability and oppression that people continue to face from housing insecurity, from lack of culturally appropriate mental health resources. So really, we're looking at multiple systems that fail and lead to then the interaction with police that basically is a loss of a member, and yet we are always pointing to that bullet that killed that person, but we know that there are multiple systems of oppression that collude and work in together with each other to ensure some of these horrible outcomes that often land on our community members, mostly Black and Indigenous people. And so my question is, I love that there's a family support piece. I think that's so critical because oftentimes, these families are like victims of war. They're really left with, decades of trauma without any sort of economic or any sort of means of restoration for the wellness of their families. And so, I think my question is really like, how can the office sort of increase? I love the family supports, but our families, shouldn't be at the what do you call it? At the last thoughts during this process, and how do we continue to lift that as the priority, even if the police is not at fault? How do we make sure that there's some restoration that is provided for the families? And this is really just a general sort of thought that I have for all of these systems that are stood up to do police accountability work. We've had to deal with funeral costs. We've had to deal with food costs for families are now having to come out of pocket because of, they have to accommodate for the death of their family member. And so it's a huge crisis that I think has to be given more thought. So that's just something that comes up for me. Thank you.
I don't know what to say other than I agree with you, that the problems are huge and they're not limited to the work that we're going to do. And I know that from my work as a judge and in other places that there are really committed people doing that work sort of downstream of the criminal justice system that need more support, more resources every day. And if I had that answer, I'd be ruling the world. Clearly, I'm not.
We have Eileen. That's questions, and then Joel.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on what you had shared previously about, in the beginning wanting to ensure an anti-racist lens. And besides training, I think training is great. And unless we're interested in like actually shifting power, that usually doesn't make a difference. It usually doesn't stick with people. As an anti-racist consultant, I'm not advocating for not training. I think training is important, but I'm just curious how, especially because this is across the state, you're going to have different groups of people, how you will ensure that an anti-racist lens is applied to every stage of your investigation and for the people that you're hiring.
I think it's a great question. We are in the process of putting together anti-racist hiring protocols. And I think that is one of the most important parts of what we have to do. You're right, if you don't hire the right people, you can give them as much training as you want, nothing's going to change. And then I think that having the clear written protocols that are public tells everyone how we're going to do our work and how we're going to focus it, assist with that. And I think those are the three main components of doing this work in an anti-racist way. But I agree with you. It is difficult that there's racism and bias throughout our communities, and if you don't acknowledge that, you're not mindful of it, you're not thinking about it, with every decision you make, you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to end up with organizations that get infected. So the best I can tell you is that we are mindful of it, and we are being thoughtful about it, and we are going to do the best we can in our hiring, in our training, to make sure that it's done the right way. I also wanted to, I don't think I ever answered your initial question about justice. You were asking about, what are you going to be able to do to create justice since you're not making the prosecutorial decisions. And I want to come back to that. And having done this for a long time and having seen the end of the justice train in a lot of ways, with sentencing and so forth, I think that you will never get justice if you don't get truth first. And I have told my agency and the people that I work for that our job is to get the truth and to make it clear and to make it public, and to ensure that we're all working off the same script of what actually happened. And if you can start with that, that platform allows you to step up to justice. And so the way I see our job is we are the baseline for justice. We are going to get to the truth. We are going to find what actually happened. We're going to describe it in detail. We're going to make sure that we think about it from different perspectives than police agencies have thought about it. And hopefully in that way, we then can take the next step for justice at the next level.
Thank you. As facilitator, I may need to jump in here because I know that we are going over the time that was allotted on the agenda. And so Joel, I know that you have your hand up, you have a question, and then I would also ask if you would, moving forward, would continue to be the facilitator after you get the answer to your question. And then we probably need to move into public comment and maybe even move to extend our time for about 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, I'm happy to facilitate from here on out.
Thank you.
I think Ms. Bowles had her hand up too.
What's that?
I think Ms. Bowles, did I say your last name correctly? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one of the ways that we're gonna be anti-racist is that we're here to have you hold us accountable for our work and what we're doing. We're not just here because we have to be here. We're here because we honestly want to build an organization that is at every level an anti-racist organization, but we're in a society that was built on white supremacy. So it's hard to turn that big old boat around, but we have to start somewhere. And so we're here with you, holding us accountable to the work to start that process. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, I'll ask a question and thank you for being here and for going over time. Earlier you mentioned, one of the things that is important to consider in building and restoring public trust is being visible and transparent. And, oftentimes when, I guess I have a multi-part question. When you have an investigation, it can end in a number of different ways. You can refer a case for criminal prosecution. Obviously, that's not going to be a decision your agency can make. You could make the decision that this is not a crime and you're not recommending. There might be another outcome that I'm not thinking of that you have in mind. I guess my first question is understanding that you can make a recommendation, and there might be multiple outcomes to the investigation. Oftentimes, when a law enforcement agency makes a charging recommendation, that's not public. And it's often not public until the charging entity makes a decision to charge. And if they make a decision to not charge despite the law enforcement recommendation, that's often not public. So how is that going to be handled? Where's the transparency? Is whatever the outcome of an investigation, is that going to be public and transparent? How is that going to be handled because you have a lot of competing interests in that scenario.
So I think it's going to look, first of all, I think it's going to look a little different than law enforcement agency referrals to prosecutors' offices that you've typically seen. We're not going to be sending a cert to certification for determination of probable cause, a charging document for the prosecutor's office. We're not going to be sending a statutory decline for the prosecutor's office. What I think we will end up sending is obviously the paperwork that was created during the course of the investigation, covered by a report that is extensive. That report will include incredibly detailed factual description, some legal analysis of what potential charges there are, what questions need to be answered in order to make those decisions about the criminal charges. But I don't believe that we are going to end up making that final recommendation, that is the job of the prosecutor's office. We will give them all the facts, we'll give them all the law, and we will leave that final decision to them. And I believe if we do it in that way, and we haven't made this decision yet, that we may be in a position to make that public. I don't know that that's going to happen. It's one of the decisions we have to make. And I understand the issue. Like, how transparent is it if it's secretly given to the prosecutor's office and then nobody sees it until the prosecutor makes a decision and then can, work those facts any way that they want to. It sort of becomes an afterthought. On the other hand, if you give that referral to the prosecutor's office ahead of time, that can create problems for the prosecutor in that question of probable cause for a law enforcement agency is different than the question of proof beyond a reasonable doubt for a prosecutor's office. Making that clear and understandable for the public is really hard. And being fair to whatever prosecutor agency is making that decision is also important. We're still working on that question. And we haven't come to a decision about when that report becomes public and how it's presented to the public. Those are important questions. Thank you.
Seeing as I'm now the facilitator, is there anyone else that has a question for Roger? I see Ron Ward raising his hand.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning.
Judge Rogoff, I'd like to pose or articulate a couple of comments and then a question. As I am sure you are aware, and many of the people present at this meeting this morning, that at the time the present consent decree in the form of a settlement agreement was promulgated, probably many of the 33 signatories who petitioned the Department of Justice to come into the city of Seattle were unaware of the fact that the consent decree did not encompass the ability to remove the central issue in police reform in this city. And that was to remove the issues of accountability and police misconduct from collective bargaining. It is one of the reasons why between 1986 and the killing of John T. Williams in 2011, there was not one police shooting found to be out of policy. The consent decree addresses systemic issues. It was not then and has never been empowered to address specific incidents of police violence. Your commission will be empowered to investigate specific incidents. That's a distinctive difference. Some progress was made with regard to the central issue I've identified 2 legislative sessions ago. There was some progress, part of which was the fact that your commission was formed. However, we talk about collective bargaining, we talk about the sanctity of unionization. And I'm a big proponent of that. I came out of San Francisco. My father was a staunch union member. But those elements do not transcend constitutionality. And that is what at bottom is at issue with the continuing issues concerning police shootings and police reform. Let's assume that the consent decree, which was never capable within the 4 corners of the document of addressing these central issues because of what I have articulated prior, let's assume it goes away tomorrow. How is your commission going to affect a substantive change which will ameliorate or even eliminate this now 60-year-old plus problem?
So I don't think that our agency by itself can fix a problem that goes back not only 60 years, but probably definitely a lot longer than that. I do think that by being an independent agency, not part of the police department that is involved in the incident, and not part of a neighboring police department that works with that police department on a regular basis, that with regard to our specific cases, we'll be able to provide a product that is more credible for communities, more understandable for communities, and clearer for communities so that they can feel like there was a real investigation into these matters, that there was, that we went beyond checking some boxes and clearing officers, that we actually investigated these cases to determine what the truth was, what happened, and how the shooting or the use of deadly force eventually occurred. I think, Ron, by conducting these investigations in the way they should be conducted, and I agree with you, with constitutional guardrails, but not the guardrails that some games we're not going to be subject to, not the guardrails of how an employee deals with their agency. That if we are able to do that, and we are able to engender some credibility both with the community as well as law enforcement in the way that we do these cases, that does begin to work against the historical unfairness that has been faced by many underserved communities since our state started and probably before. And that if we can start making those changes here, that starts to eat away at that negativity that's existed forever. And I don't know if that answers your question exactly. I mean, I would say that no one group and no one part of this system is gonna fix that problem all by itself. But I do think that we have been given a real opportunity here to make a difference that can spread and impact more than just the one issue that we're tasked with dealing with. Does that
Well,
answer
I
the
agree
question?
with you. I agree with you to this extent. I think that the fact of the existence and the operation of an independent agency in terms of these investigations will hearten the community and families within it with regard to the fact that they have more insight into what actually happened in one of these incidents. I believe that it will give them hope that at some point we're going to reach the possibility of accountability within the system as a whole. that hope has been steadily decreased to the point where it's been eradicated over time. So that will be an enormous step forward. However, you correctly identified the problem within your earlier remarks. What it is going to take to achieve accountability in this particular area is political will. And we have so far, since time immemorial, on every level, been bereft of the political will to affect the change that we need. Thank you for hearing me this morning.
Thanks so much, Ron. I appreciate it.
I need to jump in as the facilitator at this point. It's 10:27 a.m. The agenda that we approved today has the meeting ending at 10:30 a.m. The Office of Independent Investigations has been extremely generous with their time, and we've gone over the allotted time, which is fine. But at this point, I do need to entertain a motion to extend the time of our meeting. I'll entertain a motion to extend the meeting to 11 a.m. The motion is made. Is there a second?
I will second.
There's a second. All in favor of extending the meeting to as much as 11 a.m., please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. In my view, the motion carries. The meeting can go until 11 a.m. If we need to extend it again, we'll entertain another motion. Thank you for being so generous with your time. Is there anyone else that has a question for the Office of Independent Investigation?
I know there was a question up there in the corner. I don't know who that is. I think he just took his hand down. So that's something. Oh, it's you. In that part. Oh, yeah. Never mind. Never mind. It was Joel. I got confused.
I just want to, no one else comment or question. I just want to make another comment to think that, I still see this as a way forward. And just like it's taking us a lot of time, it's a lot of criticism because you're not up and running and it's not going the way you think it's going to go and all of that. And over the consent decree, we came in under the consent decree, but then in 2017, we got legislation to make us clean. Otherwise, this body would be going away after consent decree ended. And so we've gone, so for 2018 to now, we're still getting out. I mean, it takes a while. I mean, it takes longer than what the public thinks. I mean, it really does. And so as we said on the call, the Zoom call, the more updates we can give the community about what the progress is, I think the better off it would be for the agency. And in retrospect, with some of the things we've learned also, is that you must keep the community engaged in what you're doing so they don't think you're just wasting time. Because it always takes longer than it's not a McDonald's drive. I mean, it really isn't. It's a lot more thoughtful than that. It's probably one of the final restaurants to go sit down and wait for you to get done. I mean, so I'm just, I want to congratulate you all and this forward thinking and the people, the citizens of the state of Washington. I mean, every time, sometimes there's just a crack in the door and a window or whatever. This is a crack for justice. And then it will get bigger as we be able to open the window or open the door. So I just appreciate the crack for the people.
Thank you, Reverend. I just would invite you to continue to hold us accountable. It's going to be really important for us. And so, if there are folks in your community who want to hear from us, and there are groups that you work with that you want to invite us to, we will say yes. So y'all have our contact information, so please reach out.
We definitely will be in touch too for some follow-up meetings regarding some of the outreach and hiring process. I know Hector and Dana, myself, and our community engagement director are going to see something scheduled. So I want to thank you all again too for being so gracious about the reschedule and coming out and informing the community as well as us about the work that you all have ahead of you.
Thank you. You can stay. It's a public meeting, but you're part of the agenda and now here's the deal.
Yes. Here, I'll first. Thank you.
Thank you. I will attach that.
I do.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. We are now at the point of the meeting where we are accepting public comment. Public comment is welcomed by the CPC. Individual speakers will be provided up to 2 minutes to comment about items on the meeting agenda. Is there anyone that wishes to provide public comment today?
I see Dr. Gill has his hand up. Give me just a second. And then Dr. Gill, you should be able to unmute yourself, but give me an opportunity to get the timer up. Dr. Gill, are you with us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Good morning. Thank you.
Okay, good morning. Howard Gale with Seattle Stop, advocating for the last 2 years for full civilianization of investigations and oversight. I think it's important for the public to know that the CPC has consistently, and as recently as just last year, advocated for maintaining the current system we have in Seattle, which is police investigating police. And unlike the OII, not only do we have police investigating police, we have police from the very same agency investigating police that are still serving. So I just think that the public needs to be made aware that for the last 5.5 years, the CPC has advocated for maintaining that position and actually voted in favor of that as recently, unanimously voted in favor of it just last February of 21. The other thing I want to point out is I think it is very important that the Office of Independent Investigations has family liaisons and has a protocol for keeping people informed of a death in custody. That is actually the opposite of what we have in Seattle. So again, I'll point this out. I've pointed it out before. January 5th, 2022, a person was brutally murdered by the SPD. That person remains unnamed. That person remains unaccounted for. In a similar situation to what happened with Derek Hayden, Terry Caver, Ryan Smith, and so many others. So again, I just think we have to clear the record here that the CPC has not stood up in favor of 100% civilianization of the OPA and an independent method for doing investigations. Thank you.
Dr. Gale, is there anyone else that wishes to make public comment today?
We have one more person. Anne Marie, if you give me an opportunity to get the timer back up.
Sure, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Give me a second to get the timer up. Can you hear us?
Yes,
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Begin public comment. Anne Marie, can you hear us?
I can hear you. There was a lot of static on the line. I think we're good now. Thank you all for making this meeting and this discussion public. My name is Anne Marie Lowe. I live on Capitol Hill and am interested and invested in the success of community policing. The person that spoke for approximately a half an hour from the Office of Independent Investigation, I have a couple of questions for him or for all of you who understand that work. Remind me who outlined the need and the responsibilities of that unit. Was that the governor? That's my first question. Second question is, how is that group or the governor or whoever appointed that group measuring success? And the third question or request is there a diagram showing the relationships between that unit and all of the other units participating and working in the Community Policing Commission arena. It appears there are many different bodies, both volunteer and paid, and part of the government in different ways, part of SPD in different ways, et cetera. And I wonder if I could better understand all of those players and how they relate to one another. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. As the co-chair, I'm happy to attempt to begin answering your questions. I will say that as Director Rogoff indicated during his presentation, his agency, the Office of Independent Investigation, was a creation of the legislature. It was, the legislation that was signed by the governor. His organization or his agency answers directly to the governor. And I do encourage you to go on to the governor's website and the Office of Independent Investigations website to learn more about how they're structured and how they were set up and the statutes that govern their work. And I will say, as a co-chair of the CPC, we are grateful that they came and made a presentation today, and we look forward to seeing their work and partnering with them when we can. Are there any more members of the public that would like to offer comment on today's agenda?
I'm sorry, are you able to respond to my request for either a listing or diagram of all of the parties that are involved in the Seattle Community Police Commission, or the commission and responsibility for the state?
Not quite sure I totally understand your question. What I will say is that the Seattle Community Police Commission is an independent commission that was created by city ordinance through the 2017 accountability ordinance. All of the information about how the Seattle Community Police Commission is set up and organized is on our website. I encourage you to check that out again. We are a separate entity from Office of Independent Investigations and other law enforcement agencies. I'm not entirely sure what the diagrams you're looking for are, but
yeah, sorry you're unable to. Sorry, we're not communicating well here. I'll send you an email with the request. Essentially, there's a lot of parties at play here, and I'd like to understand the relationship between those parties. But I can send you an email with the questionnaire so that we don't so I don't take up any more time from this meeting. Thank you.
Okay, that makes great sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other public comments today? Hearing none. Thank you for that. We're going to move on to the next item of the agenda, which is department updates. Is there anyone from the city council that has an update for the commission today? It appears not. Is there anyone from the mayor's office? Appears not. Is there anyone from the monitoring team?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good morning, members of the Community Police Commission. The Seattle Monitor is in Seattle this week, has been since Monday. The monitoring team continues to work on accountability oversight assessment with regard to the Seattle accountability oversight bodies. The monitor is engaged in a series of meetings with various entities, including the command staff of the Seattle Police Department, the mayor, OIG, various other entities, and those meetings will probably continue through tomorrow here before he returns to Minneapolis. That concludes the monitor's report, unless you have any further questions for me.
Mr. Ward, sorry to cut you off there. I noticed you mentioned that the monitor is in town and he's meeting with several of the different entities. We have not been reached out to about scheduling any meeting. Would you happen to know why the CPC had not been reached out to?
I do not. Has the CPC reached out to the monitor with regard to their
We weren't
desire.
aware- We weren't aware that he was in town.
Oh, I thought that that was common knowledge in the city. Did no one from the mayor's office inform you of this or any of the other entities?
No, no, sir.
Okay,
Well, if there's an opportunity to schedule, well, how long is the monitor in town for? Is there an opportunity to set up a meeting while?
I don't know. I can pose that question today and get back to whomever you designate. I would assume that would be Executive Director Grant.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello?
Yes, yes.
Yes, that's correct, Ron.
Okay. I will pose that question.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Is there anyone from the Department of Justice?
Yeah, hey, good morning, everyone. No update from the department. Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. Is anyone from OPA here?
Yeah. Hey, morning. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. I'll be quick. Morning, everyone, members, CPC and community. My name is Troy. I am the complaint navigation and community engagement specialist here at OPA. I'm just to provide a few updates. So OPA is currently in the process of hiring several positions, and we're hoping to be fully staffed by the end of the year. And as you know from last week's, our director Betts has been confirmed by the city council, and we're excited to have him to lead our office in his official capacity. And lastly, OPA community engagement team is planning some new ways to be more out there engaging with the community. And that includes reaching out to schools, libraries, and community organizations. And if you are interested in having either our community engagement team, self or Director Betts, come speak to you or your agency, feel free to reach out to us and you can email opa@seattle.gov, and we're happy to be there and talk and with you guys. And that's all the update from OPA.
Thank you, Troy.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the Office of Inspector General here today? Seeing none, I'll move on. Is anyone from Seattle Police Department to offer an update today? Seeing none, that will conclude our department updates for today. That moves on to our next item on the agenda, CPC updates, starting with co-chair updates. Co-chair Hunter has had to leave a little earlier, so I'll provide a brief update and let Reverend Walden chime in if she has anything else. We mentioned this in the last meeting on August 17, but just as a general matter, I do want to note that today we had at the beginning of the meeting 9 commissioners show in attendance. I saw we had a 10th commissioner join during the meeting. We are looking to increase commissioner attendance and increase commissioner engagement. We're trying to restart our work group so that we can get our work done. One work group that I am particularly interested in getting back up and running is the legislative advocacy work group, especially with session coming up and a number of policies that the commission's interested in advocating for. So this is to say that we're looking to kind of recommit as a commission to the work of the commission. And to that end, we're going to be sending each of the commissioners a letter of recommitment. And we're going to ask everyone to just continue to contribute because we really want to get our work groups back up and running. And especially now that we are making a lot of progress on hiring staff. I'll ask for Walden if she has anything else to add this time.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to report that I have been appointed by the mayor to be part of the search team for the new police. And as of yesterday, the mayor did appoint interim chief Ethan Beard to be the chief of Seattle Police Department. So, yeah, want to know that I was part of that team.
Thank you, everyone, for your work on that. That brings us to the executive director update. Director Grant?
Yes, thank you. Good morning again, everybody. I appreciate your patience with extending the time for that really robust conversation with the Office of Independent Investigations. My two main updates for the day are we were able to move into our new office space. We are in the process of doing some surplus items, unpacking, assigning the team to their new office space. It's a really beautiful space. We're hoping to have that set up very nicely so we can have some type of like office invitation so you all can come by and come see it and do a little bit of a meet and greet. I know many of us have still not had the pleasure of meeting each other face to face due to the pandemic, and so we want to use the new office space as an opportunity to be able to do that. The second and most important update, and the one that makes me really excited, is we have two new staff members that have started with the commission. We have Mergitu, who will be our new community engagement specialist, and I wanted you all, I sent out an email yesterday with bios and pictures, but if you all get an opportunity to please send her an email and welcome her to the team. And just wanted to give you an opportunity just to say hello to the commission and the co-chairs.
Hello, my name is Martitu Argo. I'm not with you for a long time, and I'm happy to join the team and look forward to success.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Happy to have you. And then our second new staff member that has joined us is Logan Reismanus. He will be our new data and policy strategic advisor. He's also here with us this morning. I wanted to give him an opportunity to say hello as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Logan. I'm very excited to be joining the CPC team. And just like Marvichu said, serving the community. So thank you for having me, and I'm very excited to start this work.
Thank you, Logan. Congratulations. Is that it?
That's it.
All right, thank you, Director Grant. That brings us to new business. Is there any new business today? Seeing none, that brings us to work group updates. And as you heard me mention during the co-chair update, our work groups are kind of on a little bit of a hiatus. And that's something that we are trying to work on correcting and getting more commissioner engagement and more commissioners on the commission. We have a number of vacancies. That said, are there any work group updates from anyone that I've heard from? Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. That does conclude our meeting. I really appreciate everyone coming in today and their participation. It was a very nice, robust discussion with Mr. Rogoff and the Office for Independent Investigations. And we look forward to seeing everyone at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.